Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the New Media Podcast. I'm your host, Ya. We hope you enjoyed the last episode because, as always, today's going to be an even better episode. I got the whole crew with me. Everybody's in the house today. And today, we're back to talking about basketball once again. The NBA season has finally come to a close. So, in this first episode, back to talking about basketball, we're going to go over our all NBA teams predictions. That'll be coming out maybe in a couple of weeks officially. And then we'll also go ahead and give out our NBA awards. Who do we think is going to win MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and things of that nature. But of course, as always, before we jump into today's episode, temperature check. How's everybody doing today?
Good, man. I mean, the regular season finally came to an end. You know, the play-ins are taking place as we speak, and the playoff basketball is here, man. April, it's a whole different ball game now. All the regular season stuff is important, but now it just went up a whole nother notch with the playoffs here. So I'm excited to watch it.
Sure, baby. I'm ready. I'm ready for my Lakers. You know what I'm saying? We already won our playing game, but the playoffs, man, this is what everybody been waiting for. There's going to be some fun games and everything, so I can't wait to break it down with Sean. Let's get to it.
A lot of people that watch basketball believe that the NBA season doesn't start until the NBA playoff starts. I'm not necessarily a fan of that. I don't necessarily believe in that. But of course, as always, playoff basketball is a different type of atmosphere. It's a different type of feel. I'm excited. As Abdi mentioned, the NBA play-in tournament is currently going on right now. We'll go ahead and give a recap about that in our next episode. We'll talk about it all. I'll talk about the standings from 1 through 10, who got knocked out, who's going to be advancing to the playoffs, and playoff matchups for the future in the first round. And so, of course, NBA season it had its ups and downs this year. Wasn't necessarily as entertaining as I would like it to be in comparison to the years before. But, at the end of the day, playoff basketball is always going to take it up a notch, and it's always going to, take it to that next level. It's going to be a competitive hoops all around, and especially in the first round where there's always going to be multiple games going on each and every day. And so, of course, as always, I'm looking forward to that. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. We'll go ahead and discuss our all NBA teams predictions first to kick off this episode. Pretty much, we're going to keep the same style and the same format that we've been doing for over a year now. And pretty much we're going to have to come to an agreement on each and every team. And, obviously there's going to be some sort of disagreements here and there. And we're going to have to make our case as to who we believe deserves a spot on these all NBA teams. But as always, of course, you got to make your case and you got to be able to pitch it well. And let's kick it off, and we'll start off with the third team. And as of course, with the new rules, obviously there's a 65-game threshold and it's positionless, as we talked about when the rules first came out. So we don't necessarily have to stick with guard, forward, and then center. It's pretty much the 15 best players from this season so far. So let's go ahead and get started.
So my third team would be Stephen Curry, Devin Booker, Zion Williamson, AD, and Rudy Gobert. I think that's it's been kind of tough for me to navigate that third team. I think I'm pretty set on my first and second team, but my third team, there's a couple other players that I was thinking of, but for the most part, this was my team that I kind of landed on. So it's just Stephen Curry, Devin Booker, Zion, AD, and Gobert.
Okay.
Okay. We might have the same 3-4s on the second team. I'm not too sure. But I don't know. If we do have the same 3-4s on the second team, then
this is my third team.
I agree with you on Curry. I think D-Book had a phenomenal year this year as well. Zion,
Stephen D-Book, I can get behind. I can get behind Stephen D-Book. So I'm going to check that off my list as well.
I was thinking of maybe a guy like Sabonis over Gobert as well.
Yeah, I wasn't mad. Like Sabonis, I was thinking of as one of my other ones, but
LeBron's another one that I'm going to agree with. I do have LeBron James on my third team after I took a look at my list. Okay.
I have
In the
Braun.
last two spots,
Bron on team 2 for me. What you mean? King James team 2.
uh,
I couldn't have two Lakers on the second team. I think that's a little OD, but even though both of them
two
they have a
two
argument.
Lakers, 7th seed, pretty much at the 9th seed all season long. Yeah, I can't go. I can't go for it.
To me, I do have AD on the third team. So I'm gonna go AD, Sabonis, Booker, Curry, and then Zion. Yeah, I'll give it to Zion though. That late season push that he had, he's been fantastic. Another player that I do want to throw in there, maybe Kyrie. At the same time, if you look at Curry's last, I think
I don't
24 to
think
25 games,
is Kyrie
but
gonna
he
reach.
didn't hit the
I don't think
the
Unfortunately,
season
Kyrie
limit.
Irving did not hit the 65 game threshold that's been placed this year. He only played about 58 games. He did deal with a lot of injuries. And I know one was to his leg, and then obviously the load management games, obviously back-to-backs and things of that nature. So, he does have the numbers. 25 points per game, shooting 41% from the field, 41% from three, 49% from the field.
He been on fire since All-Star break. He been on fire. But
Dallas Mavericks as a whole
I
have
agree
been
with you.
hot.
I'll put Zion in there then.
Rudy Gobert, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure if I can get behind that, man. I can't.
I'm not behind.
I feel like I gotta give it to Sabonis. I feel like I gotta give it to Sabonis, man. Unless you got Sabonis higher. Unless you don't want to show your hand too early.
Sabonis team 2. I got
Sabonis
Sabonis team 3.
Like I wouldn't be mad at Sabonis third team just because. I mean the double streak. I think he was putting up monster stats nightly. It's just like I gave Gobert the edge just because he's anchoring a top 3 seed. I think that's accounts for something. He's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year. So I kind of just gave the edge to Gobert, but Sabonis I can get on board with. I think Sabonis, just stat wise, and I think the Kings still. He was the Kings' best player, in my opinion, all season long. De'Aaron Fox, when it comes to these late games and stuff and whatnot in these playoff games, he's their most important player. But over the course of this season, Sabonis was the consistent player and their best player.
Okay. Rudy Gobert / Sabonis, honorable mention. I think I can comfortably get behind that. I may be jumping the gun a little bit too early here. Originally, when I was thinking about this at first to begin the day, Tyrese Halliburton was a guy that I was going to float around my third team. Potentially, we may have him in the second team. I know he's not going to crack the first team. But it's interesting. Let's go ahead and move on to the second team because I think we have our third team wrapped up with Steph, Devin Booker, LeBron James, Rudy Gobert / Sabonis, however you want to cut it, and Zion Williamson will round out that third team.
Who put LeBron? I got
LeBron's been on
our. You picked Bron on 13?
No, he's my second team.
Bron's on my second team.
Bron,
do we not just say LeBron? Did you not say LeBron?
I think it was AD.
I said AD.
Oh no, I'm not getting behind. Nah, hell no, I'm not getting behind that. AD plays 72 games, and you want to tell me he's third team All NBA? Nah, hell nah, no way. He's been the Lakers' best player.
I think post All-Star break, LeBron, when the Lakers have been on this best streak, in my opinion, LeBron's been their best player. Like this, over the course of the last 2 months, they've been a lot better. In my opinion, Bron's been arguably their best player over the course of that time. Even though when you look at the duration of the season, Anthony Davis has definitely been their most consistent player. But Bron, to me, that post All-Star break stretch, I think he's been their best player.
Consistency used to be a word that was always thrown around and attached to Anthony Davis's name, but now when he's giving you consistency, he's not good enough to be a third team All NBA or second team All NBA.
The thing is, though, it's just hard to have two Lakers on a second team All NBA. That's kind of crazy because they're both, they're both on the 9th seed or 8th seed, whatever it may be. You can't have. That's kind of ridiculous to have both of them on a bottom tier seed, and they're both the second team All NBA. That's just not a good look for the All NBA. So it's really just one or the other. In my opinion, I had LeBron just because of the last 3 months. I think he's just been phenomenal. But he's the healthiest LeBron's been since 2021 before he got injured to Solomon Hill. So, I just think this is going to be the best version of LeBron we've seen in the playoffs since COVID. So I mean, I was struggling between him and AD. I really think either of them have a case in that second team, but I just gave the edge to LeBron.
Okay. Um, we'll go Anthony Davis for this third team. I really want to hear what we have for this second team. So let's go ahead and wrap up. We'll wrap up with third, and we'll move to second.
My second team, I have Brunson and KD, LeBron, and Kawhi.
Yeah, that was my second team as well.
Yeah. The only switch up that I would make to my second team was just between Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Damn.
So we
But
have
pretty much we all have the same second team.
Is there
for
a
the
reason
most part.
why we all think Brunson's second team and not first?
Man, I really want
Well,
to put Brunson first team.
Brunson has Brunson out of everybody that's going to be on the second team or the third team, he's the only one that has the strongest case to make the first team All NBA. And I just feel like it's extremely hard to crack that first team. That first team has been set for like majority of the season. Actually, pretty much just the beginning of the season. You know, obviously, did he have a season as good as SGA, who's currently second in the MVP race behind Jokic, Luka Doncic, you know, and the Dallas Mavericks? I know we had a conversation about the Mavericks low-key falling off, but since the All-Star break, they've been one of the best teams in the Western Conference, so they've turned it up a notch. You also have Giannis in there. You're gonna throw Jokic in there. I know there's also been a conversation surrounding whether or not he should take Giannis' spot on the first team, and I just don't know if I'm comfortable doing that. You know, I know the Bucks have had their struggles, but I just don't know if it is to that extent.
I think the first four guys are set in stone for me with SGA, Luka, Giannis, and Jokic. Like those four, like said in me. Like obviously SGA, he's had a top 2 MVP, top 3 MVP season. They're the number 1 seed. Luka, ever since, especially with how good the Mavericks been playing since All-Star break, and over the course of the season, he's just had a monster season. Jokic is obviously in the running for number 1 in that MVP race, and they're a second seed, so it's hard to take that away from him. And he's just been I just feel like statistically and just like on another level, like those 3 guys, and even Giannis himself. I think Giannis has just been the only consistent player, for the Milwaukee Bucks. He's having his best offensive season. They're struggling, but he's really just doing all he can. Damian Lillard's been struggling. They're a bit of an older team. Chris Middleton's been in and out of the lineup, and Giannis is still playing phenomenal. So I don't think I can take that away from Giannis. I think everybody's kind of just centered the argument around Jason Tatum, but I've thought about it. Initially I was like, maybe Brunson does deserve that spot, but at the same time, it's hard to tax the best player on the best team. It's kind of like 2022 when Devin Booker made, first team All NBA when the Suns won 64 games. Like, they were trying to throw Devin Booker in the MVP conversation. A lot of people gave pushback, like, no, he's not an MVP level player, or he didn't have an MVP level season, but he is first team All NBA, and that's kind of how I view Jason Tatum. And I think Jason Tatum this season is better than Booker that season. So I'm kind of just like, do you really want to make the best player on the best team, who's still having a good season, a really good season, a second team All NBA member? I can't get on board with that.
Yeah, that just doesn't make any sense to me. I think you have at some point you do have to reward winning. I understand the Celtics are by far and away, the best team in the Eastern Conference and arguably all of basketball as well when you combine both conferences. And so, that's at a certain point, it's just like you can't necessarily tax them that hard just based on the fact that their roster construction is a lot better than any other roster in the Eastern Conference. And so, that was also another conversation that was on social media as well, floating on Twitter. Aside from Giannis and Jalen Brunson, another one was Jason Tatum and Jalen Brunson. And that one I just completely wasn't on board with because the Celtics won 62 plus games this year, and it's kind of insane not to have a first team All NBA player on a roster like that and on a team that won 62 plus games. And so, I mean, pretty much,
more than likely, they probably won't have a guy that's on an All NBA team. Maybe I've seen some arguments for Jaylen Brown in that third team All NBA, but overall, they probably won't have a guy in the All NBA besides Jason Tatum. So, at some point, you're going to have to reward him.
I don't even think Jaylen Brown played like an All NBA player.
Yeah, I think.
Did he even hit the 65 game threshold this year?
Probably did. I'm not gonna lie.
I wouldn't doubt it, man. These guys played a whole lot of games, man. Let me see. Jaylen Brown this year was 23, 5-3, 49% from the field, 35% from the 3-point line. and he played 70 games this year, so he was definitely eligible
Yep.
for
Better than
an
your boy
all NBA.
Brandon Ingram.
No,
Is he though? Is he
Yes,
though?
he is, brother man. Yes, he is, brother man.
I'm never gonna get on board with that. I'm not going,
I
especially
just want to
after
say
what I
one thing though.
witnessed
I
in the
think
Eastern Conference Finals.
Just don't ask me my opinion about Jaylen Brown, man. Just don't
I
ask
ain't
me
gonna
my
ask you about your opinion. I'm just doubling back on the Giannis thing. You said that Giannis having Middleton and injuries out, him playing without his key players and stuff. Ain't that the same with Brunson?
Yeah, but
No difference
Giannis,
with him missing multiple players though. He leading
yeah,
that
but
team game after
stati-
game, day after day. Statistically,
statistically, Giannis,
obviously Giannis is gonna be with the rebounds. He's a much bigger person, but
not even
what
that, like
Brunson's doing for that team.
defensively blows Brunson out the water, and offensively, I mean, Giannis is like if you look at Giannis's numbers, like they're just flat out like if you just took away the context and you just looked at the stats, you'd be like, okay, this guy has to be top two, top three at worst in the MVP race. And at some point in the season, he was there in the MVP discussion. When the Bucks were 33 and 13 or something like that, 33 and 15, whatever they were before they fired AJ Griffin. So when you look at it statistically and just purely focusing on Giannis' season, I mean, he had an MVP-like season, except the fact that they just didn't do well as a team, and obviously that hurts his case. But the guy was phenomenal. I just think when you look at it, the top four guys were just on another plane to me. Even though Brunson played absolutely amazing down the stretch, especially early April, and late March. I think he had a dominant 3 weeks, but Giannis over the course of the season to me was just an MVP type player.
I think seeding should get rewarded. I ain't gonna lie. Him, Knicks getting that second seed without their second best player, OG being out, Mitchell Robinson being out, a lot of other players being injured. I think Brunson should get rewarded for that. But I get your
I
point
mean,
though.
it took the very last day of the season for
I mean,
for
yeah,
that
the
guy to.
second and fourth, second to fourth, fifth, literally just flip can change that entire.
Hey, that happens though.
I mean, like
Happens.
3 days, 4 days before that, the Magic were the second seed. Then they dropped to the play-ins, and then they got back up to the fifth seed. So it's like stuff in that
Yeah.
second change.
If Brunson was and the New York Knicks were the second seed, convincingly, maybe it's a stronger argument. Brunson may have a stronger case, but I mean, the Knicks were literally in a dogfight in the last game of the season where Dante DiVincenzo was playing 53 minutes, in order for them to get that second seed. So it's just like
they could have been first seed by 15 games. He probably still would have played 50 minutes.
Yeah.
yeah, no doubt.
That's Thibodeau
That's the
basketball.
Tom Thibodeau special, man. He's gonna run his guys to the ground. He's hard-nosed basketball, but as we talked about though, as we mentioned, Jalen Brunson is the only guy that would have an argument to make this first team. Outside of that, all these other guys that we talked about that cracked the third team All NBA, that's probably going to crack the second team All NBA. We're just second team and third team All NBA guys. They were never at one point, first team All NBA guys, because if they were a first team All NBA caliber guy, we would have heard about them a lot more this season. Their numbers would look a lot different than they do right now. But yeah, I mean, pretty much wrapping up the second team and the first team with Nikola Jokic, SGA, Luka, Giannis, Jason Tatum. Yeah, I'm surprised, man. I know I'm not surprised, but at the same time, it's just like, I think about Tyrese Halliburton, a guy who in the beginning of the season, leading all the way up into the play-in tournament, had an All NBA spot locked up, and now it's just like he was that bad to the point where he's not gonna get a spot.
I feel like voters probably will. I actually do think the voters will actually be a lot more kinder to him. I think that they'll probably vote him in on that third team, at least. But that post-January stretch was just awful for him. He was dealing with an injury, but even his play itself, it regressed, and so the Pacers hit a little rough patch, and that high-flying offense that had started off the season where Tyrese Halliburton was averaging 26 and 15 assists a night, all the way up into the playing game, and then January onwards, it didn't look as good. He was struggling. It was nightly. People were making jokes like his superstar trial ran out. It just wasn't a good look for him. That post January stretch. So I mean, I would tax him for that. If somebody said he's third team All NBA, I would argue against it, but I wouldn't be that mad. It's just the fact that that beginning of the season he looked unbelievable, and then down the stretch, I mean, it just didn't look good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for me, I,
that's
I
fair.
I don't see it like since the January stretch. It's just been nasty for me. I can't see him on third team. I can't.
I mean, but that's what the 65 game threshold does to you, man. You know, it forces you to have to play through injuries. There's not a lot of load management games you can have because you know it's Adam Silver. He came down with a harsh rule, just so you know. Obviously, the level of entertainment is consistent throughout the season, and we're not
But
having a lot of guys take a lot of games
I,
off.
I think it kind of worked. I mean, you have LeBron, AD, Steph, KD, Kawhi, PG, all of these Harden, all these guys. They all played 65 plus games. So, I mean, the rule kind of did do its job. Like it, you may have disagreements about it, but it kind of did what it was expected to do and make guys play games, and they ended up playing games. AD played the most games he's played since 2018. LeBron played a bunch of games himself. KD himself, all these guys, they would have played 50 games if there wasn't a rule this year.
But then here's my question for that. So obviously we have a lot of guys, a lot of superstars in the league that were able to hit that 65 game threshold. They were able to hit that 65 game mark and to qualify and be eligible for all NBA teams. Are you guys afraid that in this postseason, you know, we're going to see a lot of guys kind of break down a little bit? I mean, we're already kind of seeing it with Kawhi Leonard, and he's eligible for all NBA team, but he's dealing with a knee injury. Like, are you guys afraid that the product that we're going to get in the postseason, you know, is going to be a little bit less than what it used to be and what we're used to, or we're accustomed to originally?
I don't think so, just
I
because
don't,
we've always
I don't think so.
playoffs. Like that's just we've always had guys not play in the playoffs over the course of the last 3 years. Guys get injured. They're part of the game. I think like I remember Paul George on JJ Redick's podcast was talking about the fact that increased workload is what's causing or what's allowing guys to play more. When these guys are taking a lot of load management off, that's the issue. That's what's causing these guys a lot of the injuries because they're not putting enough stress on their body. They're not working hard enough. So when these guys are taking off a bunch of games, like Kawhi Leonard literally was load managing his way last year and still tore his ACL. So it's like, what can you really do at that point? This year he's played a bunch of games and now he has knee swelling in his knees. It's just one of those things where, if guys are healthy, they're healthy. LeBron's going to be healthy, the most healthiest he's been since 2020. AD looks healthy. KD, he's post All-Star break. I don't know what's been going on with him. His play's kind of declined a bit, but maybe he'll be fine come playoff time. Other than that, I don't really see an issue other than like guys like Halliburton, like these young guys playing for a contract, and that's a whole different discussion of itself. But I don't think the quality of play will be bad at all. I think it's exactly what we needed.
Okay. Joel Embiid was another guy that was on track, on the road to making the first team All NBA, playing at an MVP level, leading all the way up until January, up until his knee and his meniscus gave out on him. Are we all in agreement that he was probably end up taking whose spot on this roster on this first team All NBA between Jason Tatum and Giannis?
He was comfortably taking Tatum's spot. I think that because it would have been like a top 4 MVP kind of guy. He would have won it. Then it would have been Jokic, Luka, and then SGA, and then it would have been probably Giannis at that 5th spot because Giannis has practically made first team All NBA like every single year. So, and he's had a All NBA type first team All NBA season. So they would have looked statistically and would have seen Jason Tatum looks the worst out this group. So he would have probably got the boot out of that first team.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Any honorable mentions? With the 65 game threshold, it's kind of tough to have any honorable mentions. I know last year we had a couple. We had at least 5-6 guys. But with the 65 game mark, I'm not too sure if I could find anybody that is worthy enough to make the third team or the second team at best.
An honorable mention for my third team would be Tyrese Maxey, especially with how he's played with Embiid being out there. I think he's done a phenomenal job. Like he's in the running for most improved player, which I don't agree with, but I think he's done an absolutely amazing job with and without Embiid. So he was my honorable mention in that third team All NBA.
Yeah, Maxey for me too as well. Even with Embiid playing early on in the season, he was hooping as well. Like he was cooking, even with Embiid, and then he just took off during the second half of the season. But he couldn't keep them up, in the playoffs. But they're good. They're in a good spot in the playoffs.
Any love for my boy down in Orlando, Paulo? Nah, you're on mute.
Not yet.
Let's be
Not yet.
serious, bro. Let's be serious.
Played
On
80 games this year. He played
No.
80 games. That's a lot of games.
Come on, bro. He's not there yet, man. He's not all NBA level yet. I don't know about that.
Don't worry. I know he's gonna be well on his way real soon. Leading the Orlando Magic to the playoffs in the second year as a first option. It's not an easy feat. It's not something that's easy to accomplish. But all jokes aside, in all seriousness, I believe that pretty much wraps up our all NBA teams. Like I talked about, it's kind of tough to have any honorable mentions, just based on the fact that a lot of guys have to be able to play 65 games in order to be eligible for this honor. And there's not a lot of guys out there that were playing at an all NBA level and played 65 plus games this season. But aside from all that, I think we were able to come up with a great third, second, and pretty much the first team has already been decided for us. That was a no-brainer for all of us. And with that being said, let's go ahead and we can just go ahead and jump right into the NBA awards. And the last time we talked about the NBA, which was back maybe in February, we had a little bit of a conversation of the MVP award and who it should go to. Obviously, it's kind of been a two-man race for majority of this season. In the beginning, in the middle, and now at this very final point, it's been up and down between Nikola Jokic and SGA. And if we had to pick a winner to decide for this glorious trophy that a lot of players continue to play for, we have to decide who it's going to go to when they announce it in a couple of weeks.
I mean, there's a bit of a bias when I'm saying this, but honestly, in my opinion, like, if 10 years ago this would have been an MVP pick, and to me it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, just because, I mean, even the most optimistic Thunder fans, like anybody that was optimistic about the Thunder and thought, these guys are going to take a massive leap, nobody had them, higher than a fourth seed at best, and that's absolute best. I think majority of people probably had them between a fifth and eighth seed. They would have expected some improvement. SGA being an MVP level player, Chet coming back, young players, and then the draft, of course. Everybody thought, they're that young, fun young team, whatever. And then all of a sudden, you look up and, this is one of the most stacked Western conferences, and these guys are the number one seed, and, no short due to SGA's efforts. I mean, the guy, 36-6, 2 steals a game, nightly consistency. I mean, they call him 31-point man every single night. You look at his box score, it's 31 points, 31 points, 31 points. He's just, Mr. Consistency. Every single night he was getting it done. And they ended up with the number one seed just because of his efforts. I think, to me, narratively, expectations-wise, they blew it out the water. When you look at his consistency, and he doesn't obviously put up the assists or, put up the points that Luka and Jokic do. And they're both phenomenal players, and they both have an amazing argument themselves. But I just think narratively and, statistically, with how consistent he's been, he's my pick for the MVP. And he's the guy that I think, he outdid anybody's expectations. If someone said, the Nuggets were going to be the number one seed, I don't think anybody, would have batted an eye about that. But if someone said, Thunder are going to be the number one seed, that would have been a shocker. And, here we are. They're the number one seed. So that's why he's my pick.
For me, I'm rocking with the Serbian, man. That guy, I think he's just the best player on the court at all times, regardless of who's he playing and who's he up against. He's the best on the court. He can be up against anybody. For him, he'll still be one of the best players on the court. So for me, this year, he had another phenomenal year. I think, what was his stats? 27, 12 and 9 or 8? Almost averaging a triple-double, man. This guy just, what he does on the court, the strings that he pulls for Denver, to me, is different. Shout out Shai this year. Like Abdi said, the expectations that people probably had on him, they didn't probably expect him to be first seed in this type of Western Conference right now at this point, coming off of what they did last year, and just having Chet back in his first year, coming off an injury, and everything meshing so well, him getting to that number one spot. But I just think Jokic is the best player overall. It's just hands down to me. I think he deserves that third MVP.
This one was an extremely tough one for me. I think in the end, I think Nikola Jokic will win this MVP award. But if I had to give this MVP to somebody, I feel like the best story, and the best, a guy who's deserving of this award, obviously would be SGA. And I kind of don't I kind of understand it, but I kind of don't at the same time because it's just like, you know, why wouldn't the guy who's been on the one of the best teams in the Western Conference in a year where it's been at its most competitive in a while, not ever have a significant lead for this award. I understand you also have to take into account, like you said, Abdi, expectations matter. The expectation of this Oklahoma City Thunder team, was to be just a middle of the pack team, to kind of just take a step forward from what they did last year. But SGA being the leader that he is, he took the baton and kind of ran with it, and his whole entire team followed. And hell of a job for their head coach to getting these young guys the number one seed in the Western Conference. I think that's got to mean something at some point, man. We talked about voters fatigue, with Giannis, not too long ago, and I know Nikola Jokic didn't necessarily win the award last year. He lost it in the very end. But now it's just like, it's like a general consensus where, Nikola Jokic is the favorite to win this award. And I just feel like that's just not right. I think SG has made a strong case, for this award being the number one seed in a tough conference. And I mean, if it's not going to be SGA this year, I'm not too sure if anyone's ever going to be, good enough, to win the MVP award over Nikola Jokic. Like, we got to understand that.
My problem is like I don't mind if Jokic wins MVP. I think he has a great case. It's just like I feel like, especially with Luka and SGA, like there's not a consideration of their individual arguments. I mean, you look at Luka's statistics. I mean, nobody's really put up these numbers since a guy like LeBron. Like these are absolute monster, ridiculous. Like these are out the water numbers. We've never seen something like this on ridiculous efficiency. And they're the fifth seed, and they've been one of the most dominant teams since All-Star break. And then you look at SGA's argument about him being, one of the youngest teams, the youngest team ever to secure the number one seed. I mean, blowing expectations out the water and his consistency. I just don't mind that Jokic is going to win MVP. It's just like there's no consideration to everyone else. It's like, everybody has a default pick in their mind. Like beginning of the season, if you said who's going to be MVP, majority of people are just going to say it's going to be Jokic by default. And I feel like that's how the voters approach these things, is that, they pick a voter, they pick a player by the end of the beginning of the year, and they kind of just ride with it as the season goes along. And it's just like, where's the consideration for everyone else? You look at the little Excel spreadsheet where it keeps track of all the national voters and, the media guys. I mean, Jokic is completely running away with it. Like he's just dominating it. And it's kind of funny. Like the four people that pick SGA are the biggest boneheads. It's like he has the wrong people on his side. I mean, you look up and Kendrick Perkins and Stephen A. Smith are voting for SGA. It's like, man, there's no validity in that. Like where are the other guys that need to pick this? Like the worst people are picking SGA as the MVP. Like where's the other guys that are considering anyone? So it's like a group thing to me. I think everybody just kind of decided like Jokic is just going to be the MVP, and that's that. Like no consideration for narratives, no consideration for how much their teams improve it, no consideration for statistics. It's just Jokic. It's simple as that.
It's funny you bring that up between Stephen A. Smith and Kendrick Perkins. I mean, Kendrick Perkins almost started a race war in the NBA last year when Joel Embiid wasn't getting enough recognition for the MVP award, which in hindsight, obviously it helped him out in winning that MVP. Obviously, his play kind of did the talking as well. And then Stephen A. Smith, who doesn't watch the game of basketball, even though he has to talk about it each and every single day, Monday through Friday on his own show, ESPN First Take. This guy still believes that Quentin Grimes is on this New York Knicks roster, and Isaiah Hartenstein, who was starting for this team for the last month, he's saying that he's coming off the bench. Like, it doesn't make any sense, man. So, I get that. The guys that are in SGA's corner aren't the guys that are, that have the most credibility or the best validity, when it comes to that type of MVP, race in the list. But, that's just my whole issue with it. Obviously I'm a Nikola Jokic guy, so I'm not going to be too mad about it. But at the same time, it's just like, when are we going to have somebody else win this award? And, maybe it's going to be next year. Maybe the voters fatigue is going to hit next year. Maybe with Nikola Jokic going out and winning a championship last year in a year where people kind of felt a little a certain way in regards to Joel Embiid winning that MVP award over him, and then they're just kind of having to give it back. But the numbers do back it up, 26, 12, and 9. It's kind of hard to compete with that in the Western Conference. But, it's going to go to Nikola Jokic. Wouldn't be mad if it goes to, if it goes to SGA, but Luka Doncic is another guy that I have to tip my hat to. He had a hell of a season this year. In a year where I thought the Dallas Mavericks were going to fall off the wagon. I questioned them in the last time we talked about the NBA, and after that, they kind of proved me wrong. They shut me up real quick, being one of the best teams in the Western Conference in that stretch. But we're going to move on to the next award. This one should be pretty much a no-brainer. NBA Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, like, if there's ever a running away, I mean, this would just be a unanimous vote. I mean, Victor Wembanyama. I think, like, when you look at expectations, like, he's just, like, it's one thing to have expectations, and then he just went above and beyond. Like, we knew he was going to be an alien, and he was that and more. I mean, just an absolute freak. I tip my hat off to him. I think the kid's unbelievable, and he has a strong work ethic, so I don't expect him to get better from here. And Chet would obviously be the honorable mention, but it's easily Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah, easily Wemby, man. He came in, although they, didn't win much of games, but he had an impact on every game that he played. Impact on every game, man. So yeah, for me, number one, Wemby, and then Chet, number two, as an honorable mention.
Yeah, obviously this one's pretty much been a no-brainer since the beginning of the season. I think Victor Wembanyama, pretty much came into the league, 7'4", freak of nature, is a guy that a type of player that we've never seen before. People may, have had their, not their doubts necessarily, but maybe they had question marks as to how his game would translate, in the NBA, with playing in a much physical, much stronger league in comparison to the leagues that he was playing in overseas. And, it's really scary what his potential could be, when you really think about it and you really think about what he's done so far this entire season. It's just not, it's like he's barely scratching the surface as a rookie. And being on the San Antonio Spurs, I know, especially going into this upcoming offseason, they're going to do whatever they can to try to surround him with the best necessary pieces possible, because they understand they have a superstar on their hands. Play like a superstar at certain points in the season. You felt his impact on both sides of the ball when you're playing against him, especially on the defensive side of the ball. We'll get to that in a little bit. But overall, offensively, the way he took over games sometimes, just being a force of nature and not even having to be some sort of 6'8" strong, beast like we see LeBron James, but, just being a 7'4" lanky guy, being able to dribble and get downhill and get to the basket with ease in 2 steps, and not having to jump too high to get his baskets, but also, being able to stretch the floor. That's the one thing that I was actually really impressed with this entire season, was just, his ability to shoot the ball really well. And, obviously, with the numbers he put up this year, I'm going to pull them up right now. Finishing off the season with 21 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, shooting 46% from the field, 32% from the three-point line, averaging about 3.6 blocks per game and 1.2 steals per game. I mean, the sky's the limit for this guy. And so when I really think about, the potential of Victor Wembanyama, it's extremely scary, man, because it's not going to be, the conversation surrounding him in the next couple of years is going to be really, really different. Obviously he's a rookie coming into this league, and I can only imagine what the conversation is going to be like next year and where he's going to place, in that top 15 players in the current, in the NBA currently, and then after that, the year after that, in year 3, it might even be a more significant leap where he's pushing top 7. And then after that, there's going to be a point in time, of course, we all know, where Victor Wembanyama is going to be the best player in the NBA. It's just a matter of time and how long it's going to take for him to get there. So, Chet, I have to give him credit. He did have a hell of a season. He impressed me a lot this year. I have to give it to Abdi, obviously calling him the anchor of the first seed in the Western Conference. Obviously, it's not easy doing that. He did play a whole lot of games, 82 games this year, actually. I don't want to, discredit that whatsoever. It's not easy doing that. And he did, Chet Holmgren even acknowledged that himself. He was like, I don't know how Mikal Bridges does it, but all in all, he had a great season for himself, in his first true rookie year. But at the end of the day, man, it's just the guy you're going up against is a freak of nature. It's a freak athlete, and it's a superstar in the making. And so it's just going to be really hard to compete. But with that being said, that's our rookie of the year. And then now we'll go ahead and move on to defensive player of the year. And the guy that I've just been talking about for the last 5 minutes is in contention for this award as well.
I think when it comes to defensive player of the year, I mean, like this has been my pick all year long since game one. Hasn't changed a bit for me even the slightest. There's been some other notable candidates, but to me it has never been close. I think it's Rudy Gobert comfortably, who to me is going to win his fourth defensive player of the year, and rightfully so. I mean, Minnesota's defense is absolutely elite, and he's at the heart of it. A lot of people are going to say, well, he has great defenders around him, but we saw Rudy Gobert in Utah with not so great defenders around him, and he still anchored great defenses. And so even now in Minnesota, he's the part of the biggest reason why they've had so much success, because of his ability to protect the rim, and he has underrated perimeter defense. It isn't like up to guys like Bam and AD and stuff like that, but it's very underrated. He's very capable of holding his own, and defensive rebounding, rim deterrence, all of the good stats. When it comes to defense, he's up there with the best of the best, if not the best. I know there's been a late push, for Wemby to win defensive player of the year, but to me, no player that's a 15 seed is going to win a bottom seed going to win defensive player of the year. I'm sorry, that isn't going to roll in this league. You can't be a bottom seed winning, individual award like that when there's another guy who's anchoring the best defense in the league. So, comfortably, it's Rudy Gobert for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on here. I do think, Gobert been the anchor for that Minnesota team. They're sitting at the second seed, and he's been healthy all year long. He's been a phenomenal defensive player for that team. He's been holding them down like he did, when he was winning defensive player of the year for Utah. So yeah, I agree with you on, Gobert. I do agree with you on the Wemby take as well. Wemby being, probably is the last seed in the West. I don't think a player, as talented and good as him should get an award like this, but because it's, what he brings to the table. But the record for them is just too low for me. He's sitting last in the West. They're about to have another top pick. It gotta have some impact. They gotta you gotta reward seedings as well. So I gotta go Bear. Other honorable mentions probably Anthony Davis, Bam. That's about for me. That's about it.
Oh man, I thought I'd never see the day where Rudy Gobert gets some respect on this podcast, man. The narrative surrounding Rudy Gobert hasn't necessarily been the greatest, but obviously him ruining the market with that trade go all the way going to Minnesota. 2 years ago when he first got there, I thought I had him as my defensive player of the year. Didn't end up winning. I think that year it went to Marcus Smart, I believe. But yeah, I think in the end, this race only came down to two men. There's only two horses in this race, and it was between Rudy Gobert and Victor Wembanyama. And for Victor Wembanyama, it just pretty much comes down to the stocks, the steals, and the blocks, and pretty much the impact that he's had defensively for that San Antonio Spurs team as a whole. There's a lot of clips going around on social media where there's guys that are just looking away from the basket trying to get when Victor Wembanyama is down there. But I believe there's the same treatment goes for Rudy Gobert as well. There's not a lot of guys that are going to try to go up with Rudy Gobert when he's down there in the paint. So obviously with the Minnesota Timberwolves being the third seed in the Western Conference in a year where it's been at its best. Obviously you gotta give some credit there. That just can't go unnoticed. That can't fly under the radar. So, I'm glad we all agree that Rudy Gobert should be the defensive player of the year. But I think Victor Wembanyama is well on his way to winning this award. Maybe if the San Antonio Spurs are a winning team, and maybe all it might take is just for them to be a playing team, and he's going to be considered for this award as well. And so, Victor Wembanyama has a lot of years in this league, so there's no doubt in my mind that he'll snag himself a couple of defensive player of the year awards. But for right now, there's no doubt in my mind that Rudy Gobert deserves this award. And, I think, in the end, he's going to run away with this award. It might just end up being unanimous if people don't necessarily vote for Victor. But I guess we're just going to have to wait and see on that. But the next award that we'll be discussing, most improved.
This one for me is Kobe White from the Chicago Bulls. I mean, I think, there's some other candidates, Jalen Johnson, but I don't know if he reaches the 65-game threshold or whatever. Tyrese Maxey was another name that came up, but I feel like Tyrese Maxey's leap came last year, even though he is better this year than he was last year. But the real big leap came for him last year. There's some other, honorable mentions, but, To me, it's Kobe White. I mean, when you look at who he was as a player in 2020 versus who he is now, a couple of years into to his career, 2022, it didn't look, that good for him. His handle had issues, his shooting was a bit inconsistent. And then all it took was some opportunity and some improvement from himself. And he's one of the best shooters in the entire NBA, and one of the better young scorers in the league. And tonight he showcased that in that playing game against Atlanta. I mean, he absolutely destroyed them. He 37 points. I mean, the guy was absolutely phenomenal. I think a player of his caliber improving that much, I think that to me is what the award embodies. That type of improvement. From where you were to who you are now. I think that to me he's the most improved player.
Yeah, I agree with you on that as well. I think Kobe White definitely took the next step forward this year as well, being the starting point guard for the Chicago Bulls. I feel like he's picked off on what he left off in last year in the plane and how he was hooping in that plane, and it transitioned to this year. He's one of the best shooters in the league. He's been shooting at a high rate, and he's been hooping, and you said 37. I think he scored 41 tonight, Abdi. I'm pretty sure, he dropped the 40 bomb in this plane. So, I got him. Maxi, you definitely could say Maxi as well, but like Abdi did mention, Maxi was hooping towards a lot last year. He definitely got the keys towards the end of the year, and majority of this year he's been, the key main player for Philadelphia ever since Embiid been out with injury. So I feel like, yeah, Kobe White 1, Maxi 2, maybe Cam Thomas. He did take a step forward. I think he's a phenomenal scorer still. I think there's other aspects in his game that he can, polish up on, but definitely those two for me.
Yeah. I mean, Kobe White. Before I even get to Kobe White, to speak a little bit about Tyrese Maxey. I feel like this award would have went to him if he was able to kind of just keep the ship afloat for the Philadelphia 76ers when Embiid went down in January with that torn meniscus. But obviously when Embiid went down, the ship kind of just sunk with him, and a team that was once top 3, top 4 in the not the Western Conference, the Eastern Conference, just pretty much dropped out of the race and all the way into the play-in tournament. And I feel like a lot of that obviously is to Joel Embiid getting hurt, but if Tyrese Maxey was just able to kind of sustain the Philadelphia 76ers level of play and keep the ship afloat a little bit, there's no doubt in my mind that he would walk away with this award. But overall, I think Kobe White, with the opportunity that was given to him, obviously with Lonzo being hurt, even when Lonzo was there, he wasn't the starting point guard. And so, obviously Lonzo hasn't played in a couple of years, and Kobe White has been the starter for this team, and I'm not too sure where the Chicago Bulls would be without him. Kobe White, I've had my fair opinions on him, my fair criticism about him as a player, but overall this entire season I've had nothing but good things to say and nothing but praise towards him. Because obviously, like I said, the Chicago Bulls will be nowhere where they are right now without him and his level of play, and he's been nothing but consistent for them. Shooting the ball extremely well. So for all in all, I think there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to walk away with this award. A couple of other guys, a guy that I would probably give consideration to as well would be Sengun, but I'm not too sure if he hit the 65 game threshold mark. But overall, I think he's also improved as well. But there's also a lot of other guys that could possibly be in contention for this award. But all in the end, it's just going to come down to who was consistent throughout and who took that leap from last year to this year. And obviously, everybody has eyes, and they can all point out that it's Kobe White that's going to probably walk away with this award. This next one is going to be a little bit interesting. We have the NBA Sixth Man of the Year award.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think, like, to me, my pick is Malik Monk. Just because I feel like a lot of where people, forget the meaning of six man is literally the guy that gets off the bench and score. Like, his job's to come off the bench, provide whatever he's supposed to be providing, And Malik Monk is the embodiment of that. He would just come off the bench and just score or provide assists or do whatever he needs to do. Naz Reid, absolutely solid basketball player. But I feel like a lot of the times where, people are discussing him, they're discussing him in the context of when Cat got injured and he's been starting. And a lot of his minutes have been starter minutes. And to me, the really Malik Monk hasn't started, all season. He's been off the bench kind of guy. Majority of his minutes have been, if not all minutes, have been off the bench for him before he got hurt. And so Naz Reid is more of a split, especially after Cat got injured, where he was just a starter. And to me, I think that's where people are like, oh, well, Naz Reid should be sixth man of the year. And then you look at what they're, discussing, and it's discussing his stats as a starter. And I don't know. That doesn't really, go for me in terms of like what's an actual six man. And Malik Monk to me was an actual six man. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say as well. Naz Reid, however many games Cat missed towards the end of the season, he played at least 20, or he started at least 20 to 21 games. I feel like that, that just adds a little more juice to his case, because of that. People will look at it and be like, oh, he did this and this, but they don't realize he was playing a lot of starter minutes. And Malik Monk, I don't think he played any type of starter minutes. He didn't start for the team at all. Like Abdi mentioned, guy was hooping straight off the bench, and he was bringing Sacramento that scoring off the bench that they needed.
When you think of six man in general, Malik Monk is a definition of a 6-man player. And so, I thought we would have a little bit more of a discussion here between him and Naz Reid, but I think Abdi pretty much hit all the key points that I was going to say. I feel like, Naz Reid is a hell of a basketball player. But when you talk about him, it's always in a starter role. It's not necessarily when he's coming off the bench. But overall, hell of a player. He's going to be solid. He's solid for the Minnesota Timberwolves. They got him on a very nice contract as well. But overall, I think Malik Monk as a 6-man is very well deserving of this award, just based on the fact that, he's pretty much, like I said, the definition of a 6-man player in the NBA. But next, obviously we have Coach of the Year. I think this one's pretty much a no-brainer. I'm pretty sure they've already come out with, who's going to win this award, which is the Oklahoma City Thunder coach, Mark Dagnall. Hell of a job by him. Obviously, I'm actually very happy that it's unanimous for this award when it comes to him, just based on the fact that being able to take the youngest team, to the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, earning them home court advantage throughout the playoffs. That's what a coach that's what a Coach of the Year candidate is all about. Being able to navigate a young team and to be able to uplift them to new heights, and he's been able to do that so far with this team. And I know Joe Mazzulla and the Boston Celtics won 64 games, but I'm pretty sure if you had any of us coaching out there, it's not hard to tell Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown where to be. You kind of just let those guys do what they're supposed to do, and with the rest of the roster, everything will work out itself. It's not a lot of coaching that goes into that, but having to coach the youngest team in the Western Conference where it's so competitive, there's a lot of X's and O's that go into that. There's a lot of rotations that have to be made, a lot of cuts that have to be made, a lot of moves that have to be made. And for the Oklahoma City Thunder coach Mark Dagnall, I think he made all the right moves. There's not necessarily a wrong move that he's made so far this year. And so that pretty much, I think we all know it's a no-brainer that he's going to walk away with that. I guess they have a Clutch Player of the Year award. This one, I'm looking at it right now. It could go to a lot of guys.
I think, my pick would probably be Steph. I think when you look at the numbers pretty closely, it's really just, to me, that, 3 picks or 2 picks really is just LeBron and Steph. And I think, to me, I'll give it up to Steph. I think he's just played absolutely phenomenal in the clutch. It's just been unfortunate that the Warriors ended up losing that many games. I think, in crunch time this season, I think he's just been amazing. There's multiple moments that I can think of. You have that game winner, against the Suns. You had that game against the Lakers where he basically closed them out. There's multiple moments for Steph this year where he just balled out in the clutch time. So, it's not like a huge award or anything, but I do think that he is deserving of it.
You gotta give it to my guy Jalen Brunson, man.
All right.
He needs something. If it's gonna be an award, might have been the Clutch Award.
I'm not sure if his name is in the contention for this award. The 2 names that I've been seeing that have been floating around have been Steph and DeMar DeRozan. I feel like they both deserve it in their respective right. So I don't necessarily have an argument for either or.
Yeah, DeRozan has hit some shots.
Yeah, it's pretty much between DeRozan and Steph. And we'll see who they end up giving it to. Executive of the Year award, they're giving that to Brad Stevens just based on the fact that they won 64 games this year. He was able to construct this type of roster. So that pretty much wraps up our NBA awards. Any final words before we close out this episode?
Yeah, just excited to recap the play-ins next episode. See what's up and see how the NBA playoffs are going to shape up. We're definitely going to get into our predictions, and there's a lot of interesting series that are going to happen. Some series they're going to be on Temu, some series are going to be on ESPN. So we're just going to end up talking about them.
Hey, don't disrespect Paulo like that, man. Don't disrespect
the Cavs
Orlando
and Magic,
like that,
bro.
man.
Like that's, but only Stream East should be allowed to stream that, man. So,
Hey, man, if we had SGA, we'd be on ESPN too, man.
Come
If we had
on.
SGA, we'd be on ESPN, bro. It's not life's not all roses and rainbows, man. It's not all fun. It's not all fun and sunshine and stuff like that, man. It's not nice. Sometimes you got to get it out of the mud and be a dog, man. But in the end, like you said, in our next episode, we'll be going over the NBA play-in tournament. We'll also give our predictions, and of course, we're looking forward to a very competitive playoffs. These next couple of months is going to be high intensity, high competition between teams just trying to fight for that Larry O'Brien trophy. And we'll go ahead and give our predictions in our very next episode. And with that being said, we'll go ahead and close out this episode here. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I really appreciate your love and support. We'd greatly appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at New Media Podcast. And for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, all of our social media handles will be at the end of this video. And if you're listening to us on Apple and Spotify, if you go to our Instagram page at New Media Podcast, you'll be able to navigate yourself to all of our social media handles there. So once again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now Lakes, now that's overkill.